Hey guys, it's your girl Eda, also known as the CEO paralegal, author, legal consultant, legal educator, and of course, your host of the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. Join in on the fun by downloading, subscribing, and sharing our content. If you would like to take your support further, we now have Let's Talk Paralegal podcast subscription boxes. So, what are you waiting for? Hit pause, share, and subscribe now. In this episode, I get to speak to Kelby Ballena, where he dives into how paralegals can push the boundaries of the traditional role, from teaching, investing in professional development, to marketing and client acquisitions, discovering how paralegals can become the heart of their firms while growing their knowledge and career opportunities. Listen in for more. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. I'm your host, Eda Rosa, and today I got my good friend, Kelby. I'm calling him my friend. That's it. I made it. And today we're going to talk about what I love, what I call under our platform, Limitless Paralegal, where we take our paralegal skills and we transfer them into other avenues and leak them through not only the legal industry, but beyond. So I love this topic, and I think Kelby is going to bring a great new, different, fresh perspective than what you're normally listening to on the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast, which is quite literally the purpose of bringing on guests such as Kelby. So Kelby, without further ado, can you introduce yourself to the audience who may or may not know you? And let's go from there and see where this conversation goes.
Definitely. Well, thank you very much for letting me be on your program because I've considered it an honor. You've been doing this a lot longer than I have, at least spreading the word. And I love the idea of being a limitless paralegal because there is no limit. And unfortunately, so many paralegals out there are limited by a boss, by their firm, or purely just they have imposter syndrome and they don't realize that you can really make a difference. I've been a paralegal who, at one point, making $270,000 a year as a paralegal. And that wasn't just because I was doing a lot of site checking. It was because I was doing a lot of other things that were valuable to the firm because partners and associates couldn't do them. And you don't realize what kind of talent is really under the paralegal because they get so much great experience knowing the casework, knowing how the firm works, knowing how associates work, and they can really branch out from everything from mastering accounting to mastering how to network, and really being that middle person who becomes at some point the heart and soul of the firm. So that's one of the things that I love about the paralegal profession, and I've gotten to expand that in my either teachings. I've taught at American University. I taught at George Washington law schools as a paralegal, and it's been a really fortunate experience because then I get experience from them, get to experience like how little they are taught at law schools. So that's who I am. I also have TikTok channels, podcasts, but let's definitely get into this. That's a little bit about me, and hopefully we can do it justice with the amount of time that we have.
No, of course. And not only that, just so you guys know, everything that we refer to, anything, all the TikTok, all the links will be in the description box. So don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about that right now. We will definitely have those links for you for later on when you're not driving or not listening. So definitely check him out. He's a great resource for further information outside the platform. So definitely check out Kelby. So let's get into the limitless, right? You did mention obviously that there is no boundaries, and that's quite literally why I call it the Limitless Paralegal, I guess, program. But it became more of a, I guess, a mission, right? Like I became more of an advocate to let paralegals know, hey, you can get out of your shell. And I think for me personally, and then you can share how this happened for you.
Yeah.
For me personally, I was at the tail end of my, I guess what you would call the full-time 9 to 5 grind. And I had made it, right? I was in my prime. I was in that corner beach office. I was doing all the things. I was in, had the ideal attorney, everything, all the 9 yards. I literally had made it to the what I would call the top of my career. But then I said, but I could do so much more. So then I started, that's where I got my nickname, the CEO paralegal. I started being the CEO of the law firm. And I started going to network events that they would sponsor or that they had interest in because they primarily were defending small businesses. So that there's a lot of money in that. And so I would go to all these events and I would network the firm. And I basically became the name and face of the firm throughout the entire South Florida region. And
It's
so
awesome.
that was right, but it was unintentional. I was just being myself, right? I wasn't knowing at the time what difference or what impact or me just being me was, right? And sometimes I feel like we miss the mark on that, right? We miss the mark on how talented we truly are and what are outside talents, which I recently posted about this. If you guys don't know, I was a professional dancer since I was two. And I worked with live bands, which is a whole different ballgame than just hitting play on a song, knowing exactly what's going to come next. With a live band, the musicians get all into it. There's, different vibes. They go with the audience. They switch up the what they call the roster of music and things like that. So it's not always going to go as planned. And so I learned to just think on my feet. I learned to improvise. I learned to just go with the flow, find solutions to every problem, be a team player, and all these things I learned while dancing, right? And so all these things that we can bring to the table that's not only inherited or I guess founded on just our legal, right? Like our legal skills and our legal experience. So tell the audience a little bit what sparked you to do more, right? Other than obviously maybe financial, but I'm sure there was a lot more to that.
Well, let me tell you, every time that I started and I hit a new roof when it comes to my career, every time my boss would tell me, well, you've hit the roof of your career. There's no more growth from here. This is what you're going to have to get used to. And every time it seemed like that would expand more and more the more that I would do. So it wasn't really until we hit the pandemic that we realized there's a lot of things that we don't know how to do. One of them, for example, how do we appear on camera on Zoom? Because we still were going through trial, at least in international law, we still were going through trial. Even though there wasn't travel, we still had to do business as usual. So we had to figure out how to do these things. And I had, unfortunately, partners, bosses who didn't have internet at their home. So then I had to grab a storage room in the firm and say, well, it's the pandemic, nobody's coming in, but let me create a room. Let me make it great. Let me figure out, let me research as much about cameras, about audio, about good lighting, all that stuff. And I had to really learn just so that this partner would look good on camera. And that was one of those things that I realized, wow, I just learned a brand new skill that none of the IT people knew, that nobody else in operations could do because it was a need. And many paralegals that are out there probably are very used to this. You just get things done. Right. You
Yes.
learn how to get things done. So you figure it out. So at that point, we were creating rooms. And that went well. But then I started realizing, like, well, how do we become marketable, especially if we're not doing events? And then that's when we realized, well, now that we got this room, maybe we can set up networking events. Maybe we can do webinars and stuff. And everybody was trying to learn this at the time, but sometimes the audio would drop and all this stuff. And I would say, well, now that we have these equipment and I've learned more about the lighting, presenting on camera, putting up PowerPoints that made sense. Like you didn't want to present a whole bunch of bullet points. You wanted to make it feel more like a TED talk. So then it's like, wow, now we've entered into another area, webinars. And then they asked me to speak on events. And once we got out of the pandemic, then they asked me to speak in more events and to really get out there. And it wasn't really until TikTok. Like, let me tell you, I'm an introvert. I'm very shy. I'm sure now it doesn't seem like it. But 2 years
No.
ago, well, 2 years now, it's 4 years actually. I never would talk on camera. I never would talk about what um, teaching tools I had. And it wasn't until we went through the TikTok and I would hear myself over and over and over again that I would realize, how do I explain this one simple thing via through a 3 minute video? And I started to realize that those 1 hour webinars were really boring. How do I pack all of that information into a very short video? And nowadays, now in 2024, it's really hard to watch a 1 hour webinar. We're all very used to now short form. So it was a challenge to myself to hear myself, to edit myself, to figure out how do I do this. And it wasn't it primarily for me. It was like, how do I do this for my attorney so my attorney sounds better? And just realizing that there was a lot of things that they didn't really always know. I mean, there some attorneys are maybe let's say it's an immigration attorney, they know everything about immigration, let's say in Florida, but they might not know about other things. So my job as the middle person was, how do I connect them? How do I make them look better? How do they make them in front of more people? In fact, our firm at some point wanted to take care and wanted to present, and they set up a networking event. And really, it was the saddest thing when like three people showed up. And then that's when I realized I need to start mastering social media and LinkedIn and how to promote, like making sure that the colleges, universities knew about our event, making sure that potential clients knew about our event. And then the next event that I was at, there was at least 150 people there. And then that's to realize, like, you know what? There's a lot of firms still to this day that spend $30,000 to $50,000 on a booth or on some kind of advertisement to get people in, and I could just do it by learning how to target those certain audience. So that's when my profession, from like what I used to do, what forms and site checking and all this stuff, and I was very much introverted, I realized I need to come out of my shell, not just for me, but because my attorneys needed it, clients needed it, trying to explain something as easy as discovery. And then I would say, hey, I have props around here, I'm like, this is the key to learning discovery. What is this? And we would go back and we're like, this is the reason why we call attachments what they are. This is the reason why emails have this little thing. Understand that everything that e-discovery has, how it's been created, was based on this little thing, because we had a paper and we attached an attachment to it, right? And that's why you see this little thing in your email box, and why Discovery has parents and children. And so trying to understand, like, wow, we really need to simplify it, because not all clients really understand when an attorney starts going off about their case, and we have to like simplify. And the paralegals that are out there, they have the potential to be able to dumb it down. And I don't want to say anything critical. I mean, like, our clients aren't dumb, but when attorneys start talking, they're on like on another planet. It's like, listen, you need to simplify these things. What's going on in my case? Why is it taking so long? What is the next step? And they really need to understand it. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot harder to get clients. So then I went into other areas, and I don't want to drone on and on, but I mean, just the idea of like going to a networking event, because partners wouldn't always be at these events. They're busy doing what they do best. I get it. So let me go to the networking events. Hey, by the way, we do this, this, and this type of practice. Um, it sounds like you are in need of somebody. Let me get you in contact with my partner. We can help you out. And I would go to these events, and then you would start seeing clients contacting us and knowing who we are, branding ourselves. But if the firm, especially after the pandemic, if a firm is not at an event, they forget about you. And if
Mm,
it's several events and you haven't been at an event, you haven't been speaking, you haven't been part of the promotion team, then they really do forget about you. They go to whoever was speaking, they approach that person as the expert in that field. So then that's when I realized, like, hey, by the way, as a paralegal, I totally know about setting up conference rooms, maybe network, or trying to get the operational side done, getting the thing done, because partners are really terrible when it comes to planning an event. There's a lot of logistics involved. Let me be on the committee. And then one organizer would say, okay, sure, let's put you on the advisory board. Let's put you on this committee, and then now on that committee. In which case, then when there was a speaking event, I would say, hey, let me volunteer my partner to speak on this event. So then that
mm,
would become far, far more valuable. Every paralegal that's out there has the potential to do that. And it's incredible, but they do. They have that potential just to go further out. And that's when you would stretch. that whatever income potential, what it is, you would it would be incredibly limitless. And in fact, I still haven't reached that limit. As far as I've
Oh,
gone, I
absolutely.
still haven't reached that limit. And we came back from the pandemic and Zooms and stuff, and I'm still learning as I go. And then that's when I realized, hey, I don't know anything about podcasts. Let me start a podcast. Let me start talking about people's journeys, because I've been in many different fields, especially being in big law for 24 years. I've been in many, many different fields, met many attorneys. What if we were to try to understand, try to like get what they know? What does an antitrust attorney do? Why is it so important? What is compliance law about? What is business immigration about? What about sports law or space law? A lot of people don't even know that these things exist. Let's really bring it down, not only for college students, but for the general public. And that's one of the reasons I created that podcast. And it was really just at this passion of realizing that there is really no limit to this profession. Unfortunately, a lot of associates, attorneys, are limited because they really need to perfect and be super detail oriented on what's going on. Because for them, the moment they've mastered it, there's a new law, there's a new appeal, there's something that's changed. They really need to be specific and detail oriented on that specific law. So I get it. They needed that help. They need help from paralegals to say, hey, let me bring you some business cards and let me see if I can help you find a guide or something, some research to help you really absorb. Maybe I can get you on a panel or something, get you connected with somebody so you know a little bit more. So that was really the kind of the initiative of really changing my mindset and really saying like where is the limit. And to this day I still haven't met it.
I love it. And there's so many good things that you put there. And I want to just highlight two of those things. I was in a webinar earlier today from the International Bar Association, and the host, Gab Papa, I believe it was, he's from Hungary. And he was saying that we are the translators of law, right? So when you said dumb it down, that was like the first thing that came into my mind. Most of these people, these are the first time of their interaction with the legal system, with they don't know what procedures are, what's the difference between a law and a statute, or an administrative order, or if it's localized or federal or international. They don't know any of that. They think law is law and that's it. They never have been introduced to any of this. So when you said that and you spoke about that, literally I said, yeah, because we're the translators of law. We are the filter between the attorney and the client, and that's the whole purpose of the paralegal. And
Right.
another thing that you said that I wanted to actually dabble into and maybe pick your brain a little bit is your curiosity is basically what encountered this massive limitless potential. And I feel like, especially when I became a mom, I realized how bad it was that I had lost my curiosity and my creativity. And I was sucked at playing with my kids because I was so stuck in the mundane, in the routine, in I pride myself in being super organized and always on time. And that is my pride and joy, and that's something that I've carried on forever, and that's what has made me succeed in everything that I do, in every avenue that I take. But sometimes that limits us. Sometimes we need to change it up a little bit, and we need to start getting curious about something, and we need to start getting creative and doing other things outside our comfort zone, which is what you were saying. I need to get out of my shell. And it doesn't matter if I'm an introvert, I need to help my law firm grow. And I need to make sure that they're going to have money in the bank so that I can continue to have a job. And so, understanding all that, I know probably that's not what it was, but just to give a different perspective on that, but understanding that and picking your brain a little bit, I'm sure that was a mindset shift, right? Like that it took a little bit to get there because I know it did for me. It took me about, I want to say, a year, and I'm a big extrovert. Everybody knows that. I'm a balance though. I can be an introvert when I have to be, and I can sit and listen and be active and be present. I'm really working on that for the last couple of years because I always overspoke and I always had something to say, and you learn more when you just actively listen. And so I've learned that that's a skill that I'm learning now, especially with the kids. They have a lot to say. and they have a lot of creativity. And actually, honestly, in all openness for all my listeners out there, I most of my ideas come from them just by watching them and observing them, and really getting that curiosity back into play. And for me, I know that's been a journey. So let's talk about that journey, right? Because it look from the outside in, everybody thinks you guys make it look easy, but we know it's not. Like
No.
really
Right.
getting into those doors as a non-lawyer, sitting at those tables, creating those tables, creating events and doing all the things that normally paralegals wouldn't do. It's not easy. We sometimes have to either fight our way in, beg our way in, or build it ourselves, or all three. So talk about that, because that is something that we don't talk about. We talk about the glory and the guts and all the stuff, but let's talk about, what about no, right? What about, oh, I don't fit in?
Are you a law firm owner juggling family life and business management? Do cash flow issues, high turnover, and untrained staff leave you feeling overwhelmed? It's time for change. Introducing Eda Rosa LLC, your go-to partner for law firm operations management and staff training. With over 2 decades of experience, we specialize in helping law firm owners create efficient, profitable, and well-trained teams. From tailored staff training programs to bilingual solutions, we help bridge the gap between attorneys and their teams, making your firm run smoothly while you focus on what matters most. At Eda Rosa LLC, we believe in transforming the legal industry from the inside out. Let's work together to build the law firm you've always dreamed of. Ready to take control of your law firm success? Visit www.edarosallc.com today.
There's a lot there, and it's all wonderful. One, I applaud your efforts as a mom. It's no easy feat. I have a 9-year-old right now, a 6-year-old, and it was a lot of work. In fact, I actually had a someone on my podcast who is a breastfeeding consultant, and I learned so much. But my angle there was about women's rights and all these other things. But one of the things I realized is no kid is the same. Like my
Mhm.
9-year-old and my 6-year-old are completely different. Both
Amen.
had different sleep schedules, all sorts of different things. And it really sparked early on, it really sparked me trying to figure out, how do I get more efficient? Because I really wanted to have more time with my kids. So
Mhm.
occasionally you research and you try to figure out, how do I mass Bates number a whole set of documents, and you start learning more and more tricks to try to buy more time. But really, it's near impossible to buy all the time back. And you don't want to miss out with your kids. But that really did encourage me to shift. And even though I really wanted to spend a lot of time with my kids, I was fortunate enough to have somebody approach me and say, I want to be your apprentice. I want to learn every single thing that you know, because I'm really interested in this area. And to me, I thought this would be an easy thing. But I found the more and more I had it, I think I had at that point like 15 years of experience. I thought I knew it all. But when I was trying to teach it, I realized her perspective was very different. And I needed to simplify and understand how she was thinking. And then I started realizing there is holes in what I know. And that was yet another shift. And then when you go forward and you start thinking like, well, um, where is this going? Like how do we get that no, right? Like how do we accept it? How do we tell people that this isn't hard? Because we do make it look easy behind the doors. There aren't partners seeing what's going on behind trial, who seeing how hard it is to get boxes into a very secured federal building, all of that stuff. And one of the tips and tricks that I sort of try to teach is to say, like, you will encounter no, but you really have to get used to that. You have to get used to encountering failure, because from failure you learn more and more how to do things differently, right? There's things that I learned 20 years ago that are no longer relevant today, like tips on how to make a binder and stuff, because as you learn, as you train people, as you talk to partners, right? It changes. And in fact, if you've got paralegals right now who have any more than 2 or 3 years experience, they will definitely tell you that they have encountered attorneys who like their binders a specific way, who like their emails a specific way, who expect you to either respond right away or they're totally fine when you respond later. They're all really different. So to understand rejection is to understand that we're all people and we're dealing with people. So if something is wrong or not their way, it's because we're not learning more about them. So it really says take a step back, get to know your associate, get to know your partners. I really advocate for firms, for partners, for attorneys to say, stop, make sure that your paralegal is part of every meeting that you have that's like a general meeting about a client. And now I work in big law, so I don't know if this can be done in every firm, but just make sure that you can involve them, copy them on all the emails, copy them on everything, so they know what's going on. Also, be aware that their schedule might not be the same as yours. What do I mean? Associates, partners are salaried, right? So they don't have hours. Whereas paralegals, many paralegals at least, are an hourly basis. So if they do overtime, they have to submit a form and all this stuff. So if you contact them at 7, 8, 9 p.m. and didn't reach you, it's because their schedule, the way you have set them up, is set up for failure in that case. Think about, at least your senior people, think about putting them on a salary. And that was really, really hard to push on my firm, but they finally decided to accept it. And they said, okay, you're going to work as you need to, as you can, so that you can be as flexible as the attorneys. I'm like, great, because I travel, I do things, I look at emails on weekends. But then sometimes during the day, if there's nothing going on, then I deserve the break. So those are things to think about. If you've got a lot of firms pay for attorneys to have lunch with each other so that they can connect with each other. It's called professional development. It's in their budget. They get this stipend or something to connect. Include your paralegals in that. Have your paralegals be able to talk to other paralegals, to other people in other divisions of the firm. That little bit of money, that $15, $20, whatever it is, will encourage them to get out there, pay for professional development, membership to the bar, or bar associations or events or whatever it is. Include those people, because realistically, many firms out there set up the paralegal basically to fail, which is unfortunate. And then they expect the world of them. And many paralegals out there still produce the world to them despite those disadvantages. But if you want more, if you want that limitless, if you want them to bring you clients, which is an unheard feat, but if you want them to bring in clients, then set them up for success. Set them up to be able to talk to clients and network and help you present and help you get that seat at the table. Because a lot of times they don't have time to do that. So that is one of the things I had learned. I was like, you can't always assume that it's going to be easy, but don't stop trying. Find a way in, because once you get in, once you get that one speaking event, there's going to be another one because they loved you and you'll learn from it. Watch the video of your presentation. See, like, what did I do wrong? What could I do to make this easier, to make it simpler? And at some point, unfortunately, for many paralegals, there are going to be a lot of paralegals who are going to be more popular than their partners, because then they do this right, because they know how to make it simple and easy. But that's one of the things, is that you're going to get to that point where you're going to love what you do. You want to get to that point, right? Because when you have all these limits on you, it's really hard to shine.
That's true. And I feel like what I heard was you have to provide the tools, right? So I always compare this dynamic that we're talking about in this part of the episode to maybe a electrician or a plumber that you need them to come over to fix something. Well, if they don't have the proper tools, they're not going to properly be able to do the job. And you can't expect them to, because they don't have the tools. So it's the same thing, right? We have to understand that we need to provide the tools, which in this case would be what you were talking about, professional development, paid events. If they're certified, pay for their CLEs. Obviously, that is an additional cost that they have incurred, just like you. So take them with you. If the event can go for both of you, CLEs, you're there together, you're learning together, you're, strategizing and doing all the things and really being that partner that you need, because they're your second pair of eyes, they're your second pair of hands. So treat them as such, right? I remember that actually reminded me of a story when I went to trial, and my attorney and I were like so close. We knew each other personally. We were so in tune that we got pregnant the same time twice. Like that's how in tune we were.
That's great.
And so we were both pregnant at this trial. It was hilarious. And we were about 3 to 4. We were still in our first, almost second trimester with our first one, both of us. And so we're there. And we had about like 5 trials that day. It was rough. It was going to be a rough day for us because 2 of them were jury and 3 were non-jury. So we had to do jury selection. We had to do all the stuff, right? Needless to say, it was a long day for us. None of us brought snacks. But God bless whoever this guy was. He was one of the, I believe he was a clerk or someone that worked in the courthouse. And he saw us there from 7 o'clock in the morning, because you got to be there early, to like almost 7 o'clock at night, because one of our trials went a little later than expected because we couldn't find enough jurors for it. And so he came over with this amazing buffet of food, because he's like, I don't know what you guys eat, so I just bought you like what I could find. And I was like, oh my goodness, like we didn't even think about it. We were so busy. We were so like into it. And yeah, we were a little dizzy. We were a little like, you could tell, you could
Yeah.
tell we weren't all there, but we were going at it. And it was so funny because it's true. Sometimes, you're so in it and you're so dedicated and you're so this, and you're not realizing, whoa, did I even eat today? Like, so investing in yourself also can be helpful. Obviously, please feed yourselves, but understand that if they're not providing it to you, then I would seek it, right? Don't automatically think that it's going to be provided to you. Everything that I've done with my career has not been provided. I did not have supporting bosses, such as Kelby, and God bless them, because they're like one in a million. And understand that if you don't have that support, find it. There's other ways, there's other resources as well. Like, we don't want you to think, fight for it, show them the facts, right? Because they're attorneys. So show them the facts, show them the statutes, bring in resources like Thomas Reuther or ABA or IBA and all the legal trends and all the stuff, and really create a case for yourself and for your colleagues, because you're not the only one. And that's probably why I did, going back to why I created the podcast, is I want everybody to feel heard. I want everybody to feel seen, right? And I didn't see that. I didn't see that representation. And although there's amazing paralegal podcasts that have come before us, I feel like they didn't have these conversations. And we need to have more of these. We need to have, hey, yes, we are successful at what we do. We work hard. We work 24/7 sometimes. And that's okay, because we know that we're making a difference, and we know that we're allocating the time that we need to allocate in the things that we want to allocate from. So going back to what you were saying about the balance between family and work, right? Same thing with me. Is why I went off on my own in the first place. I was becoming a recent mom, and I didn't want to be away from my child as long as I did. I was working from 9 to 9, and I just didn't want that. I was also breastfeeding, and that was just horrible. It was a horrible experience because of that. I was never with her. And so one day I said, no, this is it. I want time with my baby. I mean, I'm a first-time mom. This is our first experience together, and I want to remember and cherish these moments as much as possible. But later on, like closer to my second pregnancy, which wasn't too far after, because my kids are like yours, are like 22 months apart. Mine are 6 and 8. And so I realized there has to be a balance. So like when I'm with them, I'm with them. Like my phone's away, we're playing, we're doing whatever it is. If I'm at baseball, I'm at baseball. If I'm at dance, I'm at dance. And I'm with them, right? Like I'm embracing and really savoring that moment. And I think maybe a few tips and tricks that we can talk about at the later of this episode now is and maybe we can powwow it out live. Um, for me anyway, do not disturb was a big thing, and setting boundaries was another. And so this is really what I want to talk about, because sometimes we set boundaries. Sometimes we have these, what I call internal boundaries, which we don't say to anybody, but this is our boundary. And then we want them
Right.
to follow it, and they don't know to follow because they don't do that. So back to what you were saying, and I loved that solution, because we're all about solutions here, about converting them into salary, so that the way they feel like they're not off hours, right? Because this is not their hours. They change that mindset automatically because they are salary. But even within those realms, we have to have boundaries, right? So when I went off on my own, I had a little more power to create those boundaries, right? Because the attorney, even though they were working 24/7, I wasn't. After 5 o'clock, I was like, don't even try and call me, because I'm not answering. I'm either at dance, I'm at baseball, I'm at karate, I'm somewhere, and I'm with my kids. And this is my kid time. I told you about this a month ago. If you didn't want to you want to give it to me the day before it's due, that's your problem. And so I created this slogan, literally, that lived on the signature of my professional email when I first started, over 7 years ago. Wow, I can't believe that. But over 7 years ago, that said, your lack of planning is not my emergency. So, yeah, and I set the tone right away. But the way I was able to relieve that was setting expectations and letting them know of my boundaries before they even signed up. I don't work weekends and I don't work nights. I will work for you till from 7 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but that's it. That's when you have me, and that's when I'm available, and that's it. There's no pushing that. This is my boundary. So let's talk about the do not disturb and the boundaries, and any other
Yeah.
tips that you may have for the paralegals that may feel stuck, right? Because they're just stressed out, probably burnt out at this point.
Well, this is a great topic because, as you said, like, and I totally relate to that trial experience. And actually, that really, really helped. If there are paralegals out there that have gone through trial, you might be burnt out, but think about your attorney whose name is on the briefs who are going through these things. One of the lessons that I had to learn the hard way and was really helpful is to be the master, you must learn to be the servant. You must learn to serve, because that's what you're there for. I'm not saying you're there to get everyone's coffee, but you get that opportunity to help them while they're thinking about strategy. How do we respond to this very legal, specific question? You can be there and you can say, hey, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make sure that you eat. I'm going to make sure that I have a box of snacks, of sweets, of medicine, band-aids, because sometimes we prick our fingers with binders. There's so many different ways of serving, right? And then at some point you become the master, because people, at some point, there was a partner, super senior partner, who thanked me for giving him a chocolate during one of his arguments. And that's what he remembered from me. Not that, everything was in the binder was correct or anything. He was just like, I kind of needed that. That was a great pick me up. Thank you very much for that. And sometimes you forget that there's still people. They also get frustrated. They also get exhausted. They're also up in the middle of the night. So we're all a team and we all need that extra hand. So sometimes I would create a list. What are the favorite drinks of everybody? Somebody likes Red Bull, somebody likes Coke, somebody wants a tea. Sometimes when you're speaking, you realize, okay, well, I need like really warm tea every hour, 2 hours, depending on how long the trial is going to be. Let me get
Preach.
that for you, right? Let me get that for you. Let me make sure that it's warm all the time. Like once, and that's one of the things we would do in a presentation that one of our attorneys had. It was like a 3-week trial. They had to speak the majority of the time. We would just bring every hour. We just bring a brand new um, tea, and it didn't matter what it was. It was just something to help him speak. And that's also another thing, is like when you're serving, you also anticipate what is everyone going to need. And these are the things that you don't need that certification, paralegal certification, or that schooling. This is just like, make sure that they're taken care of, because if they're taken care of, they're going to perform better, and they're really, really going to appreciate you. They're going to say, hey, we really need this person in the next trial because they took care of us. Maybe they had an extra tie, or they had an extra snack that I really just needed at a certain time. And I say that not even just our team. If you got interpreters, make sure that they have the documents that need to be looked at so that they can follow along. If there's an interpreter, that opposing counsel has also the documents that they need because they're also going to respond. So I would always just make sure like, okay, opposing counsel has the same stuff that I'm passing around that the judges have, just making sure that you serve everyone because eventually it will come to benefit everybody. Anticipating like what's going to happen during this trial, what is a weekend going to be like, when is our next break. I want to make sure that somebody that whoever is up into late hours that they're going to take a break. Can I work with another paralegal and substitute? Maybe they can do something in the background while I'm in trial. So there's many things that their paralegals that are out there can do. It's just a matter of like, let's sit down and really brainstorm all this. And that's really important. You got to sit down and brainstorm. What is this trial going to look like? What is this filing going to look like? What do we need to do in the next 15, 20, 30 days? If we have a filing one day, well, what are the filings that are not on the page, such as sending documents, making sure that the clients have copies, that they have follow-ups to these things. Those aren't on the little, sheet, right? Those are all those internal things. Let's create a calendar. Let's make sure that a calendar is on that these deadlines are on everyone's calendar. And not just those deadlines, like and make sure like there's also like networking opportunities for our attorneys because they're going to feel burnt out. But at some point when things are quiet, they're also going to get really, really nervous that they're not active, that they're not out there, that their LinkedIn profile only has like 30 followers. They're all going to like worry about these things. And all you had to do is like spend 2 3 hours just going through the internet trying to find out what are all the speaking engagements going on and really taking care of them really makes a huge difference, anticipating what may be needed. And when you need something, most of these people are going to jump and they're going to say like, how can I help you? Who do I need in IT to get you that special software you need? It wasn't easy for me from the beginning. I had to go through a lot of hoops. And let me tell you, I've been at least 4 or 5 times I've been in front of my manager where I thought I was about to get fired. In fact, one time I heard about this. This was like maybe 15 years ago. I heard about this new promotional method of promoting the firm. It was called Twitter at the time. And I said, hey, let's create a Twitter. Let's create a Twitter account so that we can announce when we win a case or that we can announce when someone's speaking. And I would do this back and forth. And at some point, someone said, like, why are we on this Twitter thing? Why is that so important? And they decided, well, we need to create like a policy and how we do these things. And we really don't think that this is going to be something for the firm. You know what? And at some point we had 2,500 followers and they're like, what is this really about? And at one point the manager got a call from a client, major client, thinking or congratulating us actually about another win. It wasn't really to him, but he was like, we saw on your Twitter that you won this specific case. Congratulations. And he was like, how did they know? In fact, they actually took the time to call us. I think this Twitter thing is going to be a great idea. But
Oh yeah,
before
all of a
that,
sudden.
yeah, but all before that, they were like, well, I think you've crossed the line. I think you shouldn't be doing these things. Sometimes you're going to have to put your neck out there if you really believe it, and if you do believe it, just really do it with a passion. Just do it like say, this is why, do your research. This is what I think is really going to happen. Maybe I have to post neutrally, make sure that there's no, confidential information. Sure. Okay. We learn. But everything has a purpose. And these days, it's AI, like how do we use AI? How do we use new technologies, all this stuff. And that really helped me develop my technology career because there were so many people that didn't know, like, what are the new things that are going on, new ways of doing tips and tricks. But I guarantee you, there are paralegals out there that have really great tricks from like how to make a binder really quick to knowing how to clear a copier to knowing how to get courier service in a certain area, finding a filing that's in a courthouse that's really hard to find because they know somebody. every one of these people have this incredible talent, and they just need to really hone in on that and expand it and say like, okay, if I know somebody at this courthouse, what other courthouses are difficult to find? How can I
Mhm.
help them? Right. And then you become the expert in that area,
Mm.
and you get to talk about it. You get to teach them. And people really love collaborating with people who are willing to help, right? Who are willing to be on your podcast. Later on, they'll invite you to theirs. Or if you're doing an event, they're going to say, hey, we were on this event. Can I pick your brain about this or that? So it's really like, in the end, I would say like it is very difficult, and you have to take some risks, but the risk will pay off if you're really passionate about this. If all you're thinking about is the dollar signs, it's very easy to say, I'd rather spend time with my kids, because when it comes to that, an extra 10, 50, $100 a day or something is not going to be enough for me to see my daughter's face when she's like, I really wanted you to play with me today, you know,
Aw.
and it's heartbreaking. But in
Mhm.
the end, like a lot of us, even attorneys, don't always do it for the money. They really want to make a difference in this world, whatever it is they're doing. And you have to remind them about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm sorry, I thought my phone was ringing, but
No,
I
no
was like, oh
problem.
my gosh, I thought I put it on silent. Anyway, yeah, I read this amazing quote today. I want my kids to see me struggle. I want my kids to see that, in this specific quote, it was talking about a mom that, talking about her frustration, and she starts saying, I want them to see me struggle because I also want them to see me succeed. And I want them to see, hey, it's not easy, right? It's not easy, and I literally just went through this like in October earlier. I was at CleoCon. I was one of the speakers there, and they fly you out, they do all the things, and they're amazing. And I'm there for 4 days, which felt like an eternity. It was right in the middle of Milton hitting Florida. The Limitless
Oh my
event
God.
was supposed to be that Saturday. So I had all the vendors and speakers calling me, freaking me out while I'm in Texas. And I'm figuring out, how am I going to get back home? Meanwhile, my husband had injured himself and we needed to take him to surgery that Friday. I mean, it was a whole mess, right? That week felt like an eternity. And in this whole mist, I called my family every day. I called my husband, I called my kids. I spoke to them and everything else in my little breaks in between. And before I left, my 8-year-old, my daughter, which is a little wiser than I expected her to be at 8, but she turns to me before I leave and she goes, "But mommy, why do you have to go?" And I was like, well, mommy's here to make a difference. And mommy wants to represent, people that don't have a voice sometimes. And mommy wants to be in places that most of people like mommy are not. And I don't tell her about being a female or mom or anything like that. I talk about being someone that does not have a certain degree or anything like that, right? I talk about more about credentials versus physical. We're very diverse here in our family, so we don't talk about any of that. Although she's very proud to be Puerto Rican, and she says it all the time. She's like, I'm Puerto Rican. I'm like, good for you, baby.
Nice.
You be proud of being Puerto Rican. But really understanding that it's a sacrifice, right? We're sacrificing one thing for the other. And when you don't have those cuddly moments with your kids and you're in the hotel room all by yourself at night and you're not used to it, things like that, there is this certain thing, or probably this little creeper that comes out and says, well, is it worth it? And then I turn around, I go to my LinkedIn, or I go downstairs and have some drinks or, some food with the participants and attendees that had just seen my speech. And they're all like, you can totally tell your passion and you're totally doing this. And you meet the CEO, Cleo, not knowing that it's the CEO, which was my most embarrassing moment. And so I'm like, he looked like him, but I wasn't sure. There's 5,000 participants. I mean, who knows? And he comes up to you and he says, you were the most downloaded, talk of all this conference and this and that. And you get all that and you're like, wow, me, that little paralegal, 7 years ago, that didn't know what she was wanted to do with her life and wanted to just spend more time with her family. Here I am. And so sometimes you're right. Sometimes it's not about the monetary. Sometimes it's more about am I making a difference? Like sometimes you question yourself because you are in this for advocacy, you are in this to improve. That's why our slogan is changing the legal industry from the inside out, right? Because it's easy to call yourself a servant or an advocate or a community service provider, whatever you want to call yourself. But if you're not practicing what you're preaching and your actions are not following your words, then what is it for, right? What is it really for? People start questioning it. And so, yeah, it is going to come with some sacrifices, and it is going to have those moments where you start questioning yourself. And that's a true raw moment that I figured I should share on the podcast. Because again, we're all about being honest and open in the podcast. And I love that you shared that about your kids, because that kind of hit home with me too. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to always be at every baseball game or every dance recital or every karate tournament or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, when I'm present, I'm present, I'm there. They know who their mommy is. It's not like I'm an absent mom. And, mom guilt, parent guilt, it creeps up on you sometimes. And, you start questioning yourself. But, then you get these little messages on LinkedIn, or, somebody messages you on Instagram saying, I saw this post and I just went to tears. Like this paralegal was in the mid burnout, didn't know what she was going to do, was going to leave her career because she just had enough. And then she saw my post about how powerful it is to take your power back. And she, that was it. She literally sent me a voice message through LinkedIn in tears. And she's like, I needed that. I really needed that. And so, yeah, even if it's one person at a time, I feel like what we both do and what a lot of other people that we know in our circles and who we will know one day, right, we'll get to meet, there's a lot of us out there. We just need to stick together and really continue this mission on improving our legal industry and our professionals, empowering them and providing them with the tools, whatever legal professional it is, right? Whether it's the attorney side or the legal support staff side, whatever it is that we're trying to do, we're all trying to win the same championship. So let's just start getting together and let's start really creating that A team, and we'll go from there. Any last words you wanted to close out the episode with?
Some last words I definitely would say is be true to yourself. Because a lot of paralegals think, okay, I need to do all of these things. No, be true to yourself. If as an introvert, I don't do as much going out as I would like to, and sometimes it's hard, but be true to yourself. If kids are important to you, if your kids are important to you, then figure out a way to involve them. At one point, I thought my kid doesn't understand what I do, and trying to expand or explain to them what a contract is was very hard. But then I had to think about it. How do I explain this now to a client? But how am I going to explain this to my kid? So one day she comes out to me and I say, do you know what a contract is? She's like, no, I don't understand that. It's like, do you know what a pinky promise is? It's like, let's do this pinky promise. Now, that works in an area where some people break their pinky promise. And it's important to make sure that things are fair, that things are fair. Like you wouldn't like it if I promised you that I was going to take you somewhere and it didn't happen. And that's what a contract is. And that's what a breach of contract is. And that's what I deal with. Right. So involve your family, involve your kids. Sometimes, it's really hard to be in there and be in your world, but don't be in your isolated world. Like really be true to yourself. If you like to talk to people, think about networking events. If you aren't a people person, you rather do more writing, well, hey, do some guidebooks, some advisories, some training. If you've got a paralegal team and you're frustrated with them, stop and train them. Help them understand it how you have understood it. If you think like, okay, well, the senior partnership isn't really understanding me, okay, we'll sit down and offer to have lunch with them. Sometimes I'd had to pay for things out of pocket. Sometimes I'd say, I'm going to pay for legal week, for example, and say, I'm going to pay that for out of pocket. But after a while, when I started bringing in a tech that was really helpful, and they started realizing like, wow, I think we really need to send you next year. And I'm like, yes. So sometimes you're going to put yourself out on the line, but be true to yourself. Like there's so much stuff. Again, we're talking about limitless, right? So if somebody really loves the site check, I know there's people out there, but they love the site check. Well,
Kelby?
you'll be surprised. I met them, but it's like, well, think about like templates. Like, maybe there's a guide that your firm has certain rules about how they site check, how they don't site check, what partners like, what they don't like. You know, they're thinking about clients, like how do we talk to clients? Who's really good at talking to clients in this area? Well, you know, maybe you're great at it, or maybe you're not great at it. But you know, the law is really not a solo field. I've never met a solo attorney who can do it all because there's
Mm,
so many parts of it. If you're great at accounting, well, let me explain the invoice to you. This is what these descriptions mean to the client so that they're happier when they pay for it. There's so many areas. There's really so many areas from like mastering how to do your descriptions to accounting to intake to doing forms um, to a great one is knowing how to dress for success, like
mm,
knowing how to tell people, hey, by the way, you should make sure that you have a closet of clothes that you can like sort of get out of when you've come back from trial or you didn't expect to work late that day. You have some extra clothes. You know, there's so many different ways. Having a list of what people like, their allergies, right? Because the last thing you want is to deal with a lot of these things. So everybody be true to yourself. What do you love about what you do? What do you want to do? What do you want to get out of this profession? Whether it's advocacy, you want to make a lot of money, well, then figure out how to be more efficient with your time. How do you work
mm,
later? How do you work weekends? How do you find work that isn't being asked by the attorney? Because there's a lot of attorneys out there that don't ask you to do certain things because they don't know. They don't realize that, you know, you've got to update exhibits, you got to do these lists, that there's all these things that are missing. Maybe there's a discovery that's coming up. They don't know. So if money is really important, then make sure you have a list and you can go through that and make sure that somebody's going to do that kind of thing. You know, and if it's really like, okay, well, I really want to gain all this experience for law school. Well, hey, on your part-time, there's so many free events that are out there
mhm,
that teach you about these things. Watch a trial online, watch all of these things, see if it really is for you. Because I think half of the paralegals who have ever worked for me, half of them decided this is not for me. But
mm,
it was really important for me to save them that $300,000 debt and say, well, this is what it really is. If you're not interested, if you can't sit through a trial without having some kind of question or saying like, I just learned something new, maybe it's not for you. Maybe you're not a
mm.
reader. Maybe you like to write. Like there's so many different avenues. So I would say everybody just be true to yourself, find your passion, find your goal, and you can really make a big difference in this field.
I love that. I love those words. I love you. I love your vibe. You're just an amazing person, an amazing advocate, and we're so blessed to have, someone like you in our industry really advocating for all of us because it sounds like you advocate for both the lawyer and the legal support staff, which we need that, right? We need that bridge and we need that coherence. So I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you do for us. Thank you for being on the podcast and
Thank you
accepting
for
my
the opportunity.
invitation. I loved it. Totally enjoy I feel like I could talk to you forever, really, because we can go on tangents forever, but let's just limit it to this. We will limit this episode. But I'm sure this won't be our first go around and there'll be plenty more to talk about later on in the future. But for now, until justice is served, guys, that's all for today. Thank you.
Definitely.
Have a great one.